please welcome to Kristensen, who will talk about how the Dankort is insecure and illegal.
Thank you. Okay, so this is part of a series. So last time I did NemID, the Danish ID system, and today Dankort, or perhaps MobilePay next year, who knows. So my problem is that we have a number of systems which I believe doesn't have, they're wrongly designed. The basic best practice is ignored. And if you have probably seen this, so we have a Dankort system, you have a Dankort, and there's a number on it, and it is a password. If you have it, you can do all kinds of, you can pay for all kinds of stuff. And it's a password which is not secret because you have not, in order to be secret, you have to tell people where you can use it. Give them some criteria so that whenever they check that criteria, then it's safe. And they must always check that criteria. But what criteria have you had for who you can give your card number to? For example, this is the Bornhack page, a real screenshot, and then you're supposed to put your card number there. But in the browser, it says up there that this page is controlled by Bornhack. So you're putting your password into a page controlled by something who is definitely not your bank. And then they have your all kinds of people have your password. And then if it's not secret, your passwords, then there's no authentication meaningfully. And it turns out there's actually a law that talks about authentication, which makes it illegal. Okay, so in this talk, ask questions, even if it means I don't finish, ask more questions all the time in the middle and every time. Okay, and I think all my points here also apply equally to Visa and MasterCard. So the whole global credit card system probably. So I want to talk about security. Let's define this completely clearly to be able to say that it's not secure and not legal. So let's start by looking at what security is, what is secure. So as an example of something that is secure, this is a PayPal payment where they have an API, then they give you a shared secret, a password, and then you take your browser HTTPS implementation and call something. And this is secure because you have instructions and you have a secret password, and that password keeps being secret because you have been told who to send it to, and only there. Yes?
Except on a multi-user system, other people will see that. Okay, but it's just a comment.
In case it's a multi-user system, other people will see.
The process lists.
Oh, yeah, okay, but that's not beside the point. So then that just mean tell the user not to do that, perhaps. Then it's secure. Okay, so what if we look at it? Then we can see that auth token, the password is secret and stays secret, and I know how much is transferred exactly, and I know who received it because I said so and over HTTPS. So that's all the things that the Dankort does not have. It's quite simple to do this right. So these are called security. In a cryptographical design, you want it to do stuff right, things it can do. We call that's security properties, and that's a well-known term. You can see if you look at a lower level example, for example, a cryptographic hash from Wikipedia, then they have these very complicated properties, and that's the same in theory kind of properties I want for higher level, different properties, but the idea of taking properties and proving them so that only I can make a payment, for example, that's a property. And actually in the case of Thue, those properties are themselves proven from a lower level construct. You take a collision-resistant one-way compression function and run it through a Merkle-Dankort construction, and then you prove those properties. The same way, if you make a payment system, you should take HTTPS and stuff and then put them together and then prove that they have authentication. So that is, authentication is that you have such proof. So just for fun, let's look at this PayPal payment we looked at before. So what actually is happening is that before anything is sent, then curl is making a half authenticated channel. So before we send this inside, the password inside, then we make a channel where I know I'm talking to PayPal because of HTTPS. And PayPal is talking to somebody they don't know who yet. And then to prove authentication, then you want to prove that the token there is secret and stays secret. So you can prove that this is just a sketch by in duck. You want that to be the invariant in the proof. It stays secret. So to prove that by induction, we have the base case. That's bootstrapping. You have to have your secret from somewhere else. That's just, you have to do that in authentication. And then something happens, but the only thing that's allowed to happen that includes your password, that is that you do that. You've been told that. That's the only thing you can do. And the things that do not include your passwords are safe, and things that include your password is only that thing, and that's also safe. Because you've been told. The very important part here is what the user has been told, which is the part people forget. You must tell the user to get your properties like authentication, you must tell the user the right thing. And if you depend on the user to do something or not do something and don't tell them, then it's your fault. Then there's no authentication. So authentication proven, and we want that the amount is the one transfers is what I wanted. That just follows from integrity, because HTTPS, if I'm me and we have PayPal server over here and I send something, then HTTPS gives integrity. Somebody in the middle can change it. So the amount is what I set. And the same with the receiver. I say something and it cannot be changed because of integrity of HTTPS packages. Okay. Yeah, so when you want to prove authentication, so there's all kinds of assumptions which are not always completely stated, but should be stated. I've tried to list ones important here. So when you do authentication, you cannot authenticate from nothing. You must have something to start with. You must get your Dankort number from somewhere, which is not. You must be told something to start with. And obviously in PayPal or Dankort or whatever, any proof has to assume that my computer is secure and PayPal server is secure. And that's just an assumption. You can't really prove that all the way. And we assume, like in the PayPal payment, we assure that HTTPS has the properties we think it have. And if they use a browser or curl or wget or something, then you have to assume that whatever implementation the user has chosen actually does things correctly. And if we have something like PayPal or Dankort and you depend on the user to use a browser to input your password, then the user has to know how to use a browser. And also things like not do a self-XSS by posting random code into the console and stuff. We have to assume that the user knows how to use the browser they have chosen to use. And of course that we have told the user what he can do and not do. That's the important part. Okay. So the assumptions are just listed. There are things which we know are true, more or less, we really think are true. For example, if the system somewhere uses SHA-2 hash, that's generally accepted as being secure, and the security properties of that's pretty sure. But like the assumptions in our design, like the user can follow instructions and he can keep his computer secure and Windows 10 is safe, there's no security holes. They're not true, but you have that part is not cryptography as such. So you have to assume that if you want to make that kind of system to different degrees. What assumptions are acceptable? That's politics. It would be perfectly reasonable to say that payments cannot be done from a personal computer because the user is stupid. And you could do that politically, or perhaps not, but it's not cryptography, that assumption. You could do that payments are only from like a special device, like phone-like thingy, where the password is hard-coded. Then the user would never be able to give their Dankort number away because it's a password hard-coded. That would be much more secure. But it's a question of which assumptions you allow in your system.
Can I give a small question? So two-factor authentication. Yes. Yes. So wait. Sorry. Yeah. So two-factor. For instance, verified by Visa, right, where you get your you get something and you have to type in a code. Would that be secure in your world, or is that also insecure?
No, they haven't told us where so you get your SMS code or something, and then you put it somewhere. Where have you been told to put it? Where can you put it? Where can you not put it?
Usually, I mean, in some payment systems, you get transferred to another page, and it will be the bank system up in the top.
But the page transferring you to another, so you in a store, and then they send you somewhere. That place where you send is determined by the page you come from.
Yes.
How do you know that they're not evil and
Yes.
send you to?
And that answers my question. Thank you.
Yeah. So the same thing as in Dankort. It's completely silly. Why is that accepted? And as far as I can tell, it's legal. We'll come to that later. So about the stupid users or users who don't care to learn how to do stuff. Even if you know some of your users are stupid, some of them are not. And it's not, when you do cryptography, you don't usually assume, the security doesn't matter because some of my users are stupid. That's just not best practice. That's not how things are done. It's like Digitaliseringsstyrelsen says, it's like that things are done, but it's not true. So an example to illustrate, there's some company, a bank or something, they had a special trash can for private personal information, and so then one day they put it in the wrong trash can and then of the road, all over the road, with personal information, bank letters. But why is that a problem? Because go to any apartment complex and search the trash cans there, they're full of personal information. So if that's not a problem and people do that anyway, why should the bank care? And I see that as perhaps I can personally, perhaps I can want to make my own personal information secure, self-determination and personal responsibility. I want self-determination, which I don't have unless you have cryptographical security. Cryptographical security means that only if I mess up, then my personal information or bank details get lost, more or less. But that should be the goal. Even if you can never reach it, we should try for it at least. Okay, so when we have a system, a design, we're making a design, a payment design. So we want things like authentication, security properties, which it has. For each property, we then have to say, you can't have perfect security. Always there's some system administrator or something that can bypass it. But we want to limit how many there are of those and then check them carefully. So for each property like authentication, there are people, like the people who make my computer hardware or system administrator at Nets, they can bypass it. But list the properties, who can break each property, and the security hole is if somebody outside those things you checked can break the property, then it's a security hole. So for example, of things that are not security holes, we had at Nets, our Dankort system, the guys who make those, he had a system administrator which leaked personal transaction records to a newspaper, and cryptographically, in crypto, that's not a security hole as such because the system administrator is a trusted party. So it's a security hole in a non-crypto sense, but not in a crypto sense, to have him around, that they got him around. Or for example, if a Gmail user, he has been told only to input his Google password only ever on accounts.google.com. And then our stupid user inputs it on notgoogle.com. And then he's compromised, of course, but it's not a security hole as such because we are clearly breaking an assumption in the design. Yeah. So this is what I just said. The definition of a security hole is somebody outside our circles of trust which can break a security property without breaking any of the assumptions we made before we designed the system, when we designed the system. Assumptions like that IBM administrator is trustworthy. Okay, and when we have made a design, it can be in 3 states. It can be secure. We have a proof that it's secure. Like when we have a cryptographical design, then we can know it's secure, and the way to do that is always a proof. Cryptography, that's proofs, a math. So we can prove it secure. We can prove it insecure by a counterexample usually. So show how somebody not trusted can make a payment on our behalf, then it's broken. And it can happen that something you just can't prove or disprove yet. Okay, so let's get to the meat. Let's get to Dankort. So let's think about it. What properties do we want in the Dankort? And who decides who they should be? And that's we have somewhere to get those the law which says how things should work. And it's law of payments in Denmark, actually. Most important as far as I can tell. And paragraph 128. And it's a bit of a rubber paragraph because it sets conditions for high risk. so this European law that make exceptions which are very rubbery for what is high risk and low risk, and there's, as far as I can tell, almost no criteria for what a low risk transaction has to do, which properties it has to have. But high risk, it does. There's real criteria. So the main thing is strong user authentication. By that they mean 2-factor for high risk transactions. And the interesting part is also here that the system has to be designed such that confidentiality of authentication data is protected. That was what we saw with the Dankort number. That was not protected, especially when we when we know that only me and the bank should ever be able to see it, that somebody else, like pages where we use it, can take it, then it's not protected. So apologies to Bornhack DK. I could have used any site, but let's use Bornhack DK. Any site that uses Dankort has the same vulnerability. So nothing against Bornhack. They're nice people. I owe them a beer for using them as example here. I could use any site. So for the Dankort, you have the card number and the date and the CVV, but I'll probably just call it card number. I assume it's the same with Visa and MasterCard. So that's the factor known as knowledge. And then sometimes they use an SMS. So that's possession of a mobile phone number. So that's the two factors in a high-risk payment. But the card number is not protected, which it had to be by the definition. So it's not a knowledge factor, really, not according to the law and simple analysis. So high-risk payment is currently use one factor, where the law says it has to do two, so illegal. And there's lots of pages where you can stores where you can use the card number without SMS. So that's something zero factor, because the card number is not a factor at all, because it's not meaningfully secret. Like whenever I say card number, think of it as the same as your PayPal password, and where you put and do not put that. Okay, so let's be a bit precise. When we have the property authentication, so by the definition of security before, we want that property, trusted parties who can have that property, have the secret is me and the bank and nobody else. There's no reason why anybody else should ever have my password. And among the parties that are not trusted are, for example, Bornhack DK, sorry, Bornhack. And if I pay in a Chinese store, they should not be able to steal it either. If I pay a little $5 thing, then I don't want them to be able to take arbitrary amounts from my account just because of that. And we have the assumptions that the user has been told where to put his password or not. Actually, there's no assumptions in the case of Dankort. That's fine. No instructions, meaningfully. So if we assume somebody who is not trusted, let's take the Bornhack people, then they can make a fake dialogue here, and I will happily put in my password without breaking any assumptions or instructions, which contrast with the PayPal, which look like that. And they haven't told me where to put PayPal haven't told me where to put my PayPal password. Obviously this is right, but they should really tell me explicitly. But at least you can guess it what's right, if you know. But people who know less than me, which a lot of people, sorry, don't always know that. So on high-risk payment, there's an SMS factor, but you haven't been told where to input your SMS two-factor, so you can do all kinds of man-in-the-middle attack. And again, by the definitions in the law of the SMS second factor is authentication data, and it's not protected because you have not been told where to put it. So illegal, meaningless, more or less. Yeah, and as I already said, there's the law. If it's the net says 450 kroner, above that there have to be two-factor. That's what they say is the requirement. I assume they have gotten that requirement from the authorities. But for anything below that, doesn't seem to be any requirement at all, and it seems that's not okay with me. It's legal, but it's quite silly. If 400 kroner, that I want to be asked before they take that from my account, but it's not required, as far as I can tell. So let's look at some more laws. So it says that when you make a transaction, then it has to say who the money goes to, and it has to say how much the transaction is for. So how I interpret that is that a transaction of that amount, if I say okay to a transaction, I have to be shown the amount, and people who are not me or the bank, assume trusted parties, they cannot change it. But again, assume Bornhack is evil. So I put in my account number, and then they say 150, but this is just HTML. They could make it fake and then take some other amount, usually higher. Then and now a Bornhack example, but I could use many pages. And this is just, there's no reason for this. There's no reason not to do it right. So that's the security property of the receiver. So that's, I have to do a bit more analysis, but it's quite interesting. So as I see it, there's two main kinds of payment systems. There's like when you do when you go to your bank and then send some money to your friend, that's like a one-way thing transaction. And it only says the account number which I gave to the bank, so it doesn't really say who the receiver is, as the law requires. But so I assume the law is meant for two-sided transactions, like in a store where you give some money and get some back from the same party immediately. So let's assume that that's what the law means. So let's, if there is some store, let's say the Bornhack store again, what actually happens is Bornhack has made some deal with a payment broker, which trusts Bornhack, and some they said Bornhack is okay, tested them a bit. Then we have this broker is then has a relation to Nets, and Nets is the guy who has my payment card. So there's a line of trust, web of trust, down from me to Bornhack, or should be at least. And what I would like in a payment is that when I go to a store, then I can see they're trustworthy because there's a web of trust from me to them. So the receiver property I interpret as if it should not be possible to make a payment in a store where there's not such a line of trust. So let's break this. Let's take the Dankort and let's make it a high-risk payment. That's with two-factor. So let's say some evil person has registered this address. The real store is on proshop.dk, and then some evil person makes proshop/APS.dk, and then just copies the real site to that and somehow lures me to that site. And then the guy can, every time I put something into that site, the guy puts it into the real site. Except for address information, which he sets as his own address. So when I, on the fake site, come to the payment option, then I put in my Dankort number, which I've been given no instruction where to put, so that's fine. And then I get an SMS. And so, yes, the SMS is like that. So you can say the SMS does say who the receiver is, but if this was done right, it would say the domain name, which is the part that the browser guarantees. That in order to know who people is, you have to have something unique and non-falsifiable. And that's in the browser, that's the domain name and nothing else. So if the SMS had said proshop.dk, then I'd be done. Then I would have to do something stupid for them to take my money. But it says proshop APS, So my fake site, the attacker's fake site is perfectly reasonable for a company named ProShop APS. So that I happily take my SMS code and put it into the form I got. And now there's paid for the merchandise, but they're sent to the attacker. So I made a transaction with somebody who are not the real person. So the receiver of the amount was that's how I interpret that property in the law. And it's broken. They do it right, please. To see how this can be done correctly, let's look at PayPal. Yes, sure.
This sounds like something you should have tried out. Have you tried doing a fake website for stuff like that and done a transaction with your own card? Because as far as I know, there's lots of session IDs and stuff going on between the
There's
shop and so on.
nothing that can go wrong.
So have you tried this in practice?
No, but there's the thing is, you can there's literally nothing that can go wrong. There's of the information I send to the fake store, nothing gets sent to net. You can literally have a man sitting and putting in the data in the real site. And there's simply no way they can tell that it's being faked. Sure, it's fair enough if you don't believe it, but yeah. I haven't tested it. I'm pretty sure it works. So let's see how to do this right. Let's take a PayPal transaction. So you go to some humble button, for example, and want to pay for something. You click the button, you get sent to PayPal. You put in your password, which you can do because you have gotten instructions only to put it in on paypal.com. Then now you're logged in, you get this page where you're shown who it's sent to, who you're dealing with, the amount. Click OK, and you get sent back. Perfectly reasonable. You can see that the only way a deal gets accepted by PayPal is if you get to this page, and then you get the right receiver and the right amount, which the stuff works. And to guard against fake pages sending you to PayPal with all kinds of in the middle, PayPal could do refer header. That's what I will do, which they don't do, but they should do that and could do that. I tested that. They do not do that, which sounds really bad to me. Yes. So I've been talking to various authorities and stuff. So lastly, I did NemID, which is also from Net. And I've talked to them about Dankort, and the discussion stalled. I said it's not legal. So that was before they started two-factor. Then he said it's not legal, it's not secure. Then they said there will be two-factor, which will be legal and secure. And I said, no, it won't be. Not from your description. And then he never answered. They don't think they care. And my NemID analysis, I got this huge professor to say that it's good, but Net doesn't seem to care. NemID is still illegal, still insecure, even though nobody has gainsaid me my arguments about that. Yes, and then so Net say that they will follow the law by doing a two-factor on every time you buy for more than 450 kroner, which still doesn't happen. And this law has been in effect for years. So it doesn't seem like something the Danish society takes very seriously. This was August last year they said that. It is still, I just got an example today where they did not do two-factor on a 600 kroner buy. The Danish Financial Supervisory Authority which it's their fault. They should be checking this. And I said this is not secure, and they didn't say anything to that. They just doesn't. I need to talk some more to them, but they really do not seem to care. The Danish National Bank also has this as their job description. So I sent a bit more analysis to them with some hints, like I talked about the obvious security hole in mobile pay. To see what they ask me what that is, they didn't ask. They don't really care. But they said your analysis looked fine. I think they haven't gainsaid it. They said it's like a compromise between user friendliness and flexibility and security and stuff. So and it's fine as it is, which I do not understand, because PayPal and mobile pay are way more secure than Dankort, and they are easier to use, in my opinion. So when they say it's a compromise, they're just excusing their own inaction. There's no reason for. I think there's no reason for it to be like it is. Personally, I've considered it extremely unfriendly to use Dankort, because some stores only have that option, and then I have to trust the store not to steal my Dankort. For example, I wanted to buy something from a Chinese store. That's the Visa card in that case, and maybe it's a good store, maybe it isn't. It's hard to determine. It has good prices for good things, and it's extremely user unfriendly. If it used PayPal, for example, I would never be out more than it said I would pay. So if I bought a pair of shoes from that, I would never lose more than the money I put in. I thought I put in, but with the Dankort, they could take my Dankort and use it other places, and that's not friendly. That was extremely unfriendly. And I have family who ask me, is it safe to use my Dankort here? And I said, no. But and were really stressed for hours about, they really wanted to buy that, but is it safe? And the compromise between user friendliness and security doesn't exist. It's just stupid in both ways. And the authorities have misunderstood it. It's the way the Dankort work is that they just refund basically everything where you haven't been a complete and other idiot, which is good. That's good. But like refund where you have to check your bank statement, that should not be a replacement for cryptography and legality for that sake. So that's it. Questions? Sure.
So I think the issue here is mostly, so I just read it seems Dankort is kind of compatible to Visa, so it's also a Visa card, and I guess that's the problem here, because like you have a system that is deployed worldwide, and making a change there is incredibly hard. Like, I mean, you have this other kind of known problem with credit cards, that they have this magnet stripe, which you can just copy, which is also like, and I think in the US they're still using it, and if you would build credit cards without it, then you could no longer travel to the US. So I guess that is kind of the issue here. I mean,
Yes,
in principle, you're right that this is a glaring security problem, but changing that over to another system is probably, yeah.
Sure. But you do have PayPal already, which could just lead to PayPal. Yeah, but you're completely correct. That's probably the reason why it is as it is.
I think that the other reason is also that they have heard from the security community before that it's impossible to make it 100% secure. so they always have the risk. And so they've more just calculated in that it's cheaper for them to not offer any resources on security and design it in a way that it cannot be phished easily. And therefore they don't really bother doing it.
That
And-
is correct. That is absolutely correct. Yeah, but the thing here is that I think it actually says in the law to say it's authentication. And in cryptography, that term has a meaning. So I think it's actually illegal if you.
I have a remark on that. So the Danish law you quote also states that it's subservient to the European directive on electronic payments, or whatever it's called, which specifies that there must be a balance between security and convenience. So it actually allows weak security for smaller cash amounts. I think
Yeah.
it's kind of unclear how it defines it.
450 in
No,
Denmark,
it's
I
not.
think.
Yeah, but the European law is not that precise. But it gives some leeway, so it's not really clear what's illegal and what's not. But there is, at the European level, at least the possibility of making weak security permissible in some cases. But that means that the banks and the payment providers are responsible for any misuse, which is as it is.
Yeah, sure. But that only for it does require authentication for high risk. Yeah. Sure. I think we more or less all agree, as far as I can hear. Then thank you for listening.